What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I hope you're all keeping wonderfully well. So what are the 15 best players to never win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship? We're going to be creating a team today looking at the 15 best players to never win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. It's one of the most discussed topics really in Gaelic games, whether it be football, hurling, ladies football or camogie. Looking at the 15 best players to never win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. And obviously today we're going to be looking at the 15 best players to never win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship in men's Gaelic football. Of course, I will be making a video like this as well for hurling at some point further down the line, so do stay tuned and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you are new around here, I do make a number of videos like this one looking at some of the best moments in Gaelic football, podcasts, interviews, fan reactions, news videos, absolutely everything. So if you are new around here, hit the like button and subscribe. And of course, if you are already subscribed, you are in fact a legend. So look, listen, let's get straight into it. And look, listen, I suppose there's a few things obviously we should discuss before we delve straight into this team. Obviously, if some of you lads follow me over on Instagram and on Facebook, you will have seen this team most likely already. And I actually wasn't planning on making a video on this, but I think there was over 100 comments about Instagram and Facebook. And there was so much discussion over this. I think, it was on the Explore page. This post on Instagram was one of my most ever liked posts on Instagram. So I thought, you know what, let's make a video out of this, because there really is nothing else to discuss in Gaelic games at the minute, and there's probably no better time to make a video on this. It is also worth pointing out that the majority of these players are from 2000 onwards. A few of these players would have played in the 90s, but none of these players would have ever played in like the early 90s or the 80s or anything like that. The reason being is I was born in 1995, so I can't really speak too much about players from like the 80s or the 70s. And to be honest, if I was to make a video on that, it would probably take me a long time, because I'd have to go back and watch numerous games. And unfortunately with the GEA, it's not that easy to go back and watch games from 1986 or 1985 or anything like that. So yeah, unfortunately, a lot of these players are probably, from the 2000 onwards. But look, listen, if anyone is watching who followed Gaelic football and watched Gaelic football back in the 70s and 80s, do feel free to let me know back then, what players do you think would have made it into this team that never won an All-Ireland back then. And also we are looking at retired players only as well. So, I didn't want to, of course, include players who are already playing right now, because who knows, maybe they will win an All-Ireland at some point. It's not exactly impossible. A lot of the lads on the Mayo team, or the likes of Conor McManus and Monaghan, for example, who would ring a bell, obviously they are still currently playing, and Monaghan will probably never win an All-Ireland anytime soon, let's be realistic, but you just never know. So I didn't want to, include any of those players in this team. Let's look at retired players only. And yeah, obviously some of these players would have won All-Ireland Club Senior Championships as well at some point, but obviously that's a separate competition to the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship in inter-county football. They're two separate competitions, so we're looking at All-Ireland inter-county football only for the Senior Football Championship. So let's get straight into it. Alright, so we'll kick things off with the goalkeeper, and we're actually going to go for David Clarke. One of the recent retirees. Of course, he retired only a couple of months ago. And he gets in goal for Mayo. 133 championship appearances for David Clarke between 2002 and 2020. One of the longest serving players on this list, without doubt. There's a lot of players on this list who played, 10, 15 years and so on, of course, with their county. And obviously David Clarke with Mayo. What a player this guy was, in all honesty, in goal. Look, listen, he did make one or two errors down the line. You think back to some All-Ireland finals, a few mistakes here and there, but most notably, all players make mistakes. Stephen Cluxton has made a number of mistakes before with Dublin. You can't forget that as well. Mistakes do happen, but I think one of the most impressive things with David Clarke is, he never let their mistakes get to his head. He always stuck to his guns. He stuck to his abilities, and he was one of definitely the best shot stoppers in Gaelic football, without doubt. His distribution generally was brilliant. And like what I said before, he has made errors before. A lot of goalkeepers have, but I think the way David Clarke has responded to those errors, without doubt, nothing short of remarkable from David Clarke. So he gets in there. Some other goalkeepers could definitely get a mention. You're looking at Shane Curran of Roscommon, Gary Connaughton of Westmeath, Anthony Masterson of Wexford. They were some of the goalkeepers that a lot of you lads mentioned over on that post on Instagram. So yeah, look, listen, I'd put David Clarke in there, but undoubtedly there's definitely many other options that you could look for. Okay, now on to the right corner back, and we've got Sean Marty Lockhart of Derry. What a very classy cornerback this guy was. One of the first of his kind in terms of adding that, attacking output from cornerbacks. He was quick, he was a tight marker, he was a great defender, just a really classy defender coming out of the province of Ulster. You think of a lot of the great defenders down the years have come from the Ulster province, and there's no surprises really that there will be a number of players on this list that have played in the Ulster province. And Sean Marty Lockhart was definitely another one of them. He held Peter Canavan scoreless from play in the 2001 Ulster final, in both games as a matter of fact, because obviously it went to a replay. And looking through what he's won as well, he's won 3 National Leagues, 1 Ulster title, 1 Under-21 All-Ireland, and 1 All-Star in 98 as well. So an exceptional footballer all around, and he gets in a cornerback. In a fullback, we've Barry Owens of Fermanagh, the only Fermanagh player to make it on this list. And I suppose when you think of Fermanagh, you don't really look at them as one of the top teams in Gaelic football down the years without doubt. Obviously, they've never won a provincial title. And of course, looking back at them, they've only played in 2 Ulster finals as far as I remember, 2008 and I think was it 2018 I think as well, or 2009, 2018, something like that. But obviously looking at his time with Fermanagh, what a solid fullback, part of that great Fermanagh team really in the early 2000s that of course made the All-Ireland quarter-finals in 2003, did one better by making the All-Ireland semi-finals in 2004, part of that team that, upset Armagh in 2004 of course as well in the All-Ireland quarter-finals. Just an exceptional footballer without doubt. Played between 2001 and 2014. Won 2 All-Stars both in 2004 and 2006. And yeah, you can't really argue too much with Barry Owens. In terms of the other players maybe you could put in there, you could look at Paddy Christie maybe of Dublin. Chris Barrett maybe of Mayo, who recently retired as well. But I think Barry Owens for me gets in there without a shadow of doubt. And obviously, getting back to Paddy Christie, obviously he was involved with the 95 winning All-Ireland team, but he was injured for the semi-final and final, so he didn't play. But Barry Owens gets in there anyways, exceptional fullback, brilliant defensively, and, one of the reasons why Fermanagh kept so many teams down to really low scores was because of Barry Owens and the work he did. And when you think of how competitive the Ulster province was back then, I think Barry Owens and Fermanagh without doubt exceptional during that time period. We move on to the left cornerback, and it is Keith Higgins, another player who of course is recently retired of Mayo. There's obviously going to be a string of Mayo players throughout this list because obviously you can nearly put a team of Mayo players together, in all honesty, in terms of the best players to never win an All-Ireland. You could probably put it all Mayo players really if you included the current players right now. But what a brilliant servant this guy was for Mayo, brilliant all-round footballer, much like David Clark in terms of looking back at what he's achieved and what he's given to this Mayo side. 8 Connacht titles, 1 National League, 1 Under-21 All-Ireland, 4 All-Stars, 1 Young Footballer of the Year. I think he might be up there with the most All-Stars in terms of players that is actually on this list. So without doubt, Keith Higgins, always a very brilliant servant, exceptional footballer, could kick brilliant points at times when he needed to as well, brilliant at tracking back and covering, positionally brilliant as well when you look at some of the teams he's come up against. So Keith Higgins gets in there. Some other players maybe worth mentioning, Joe Higgins of Laois and Tom Kelly of Laois as well. They were 2 players that got a big mention over on Instagram and Facebook, but Keith Higgins gets in there for me. So we move into the half-back line, and at right half-back or right wing-back, or whatever way you want to look at it, we've actually got Gary Brennan. Now, Gary Brennan isn't a wing-back, he isn't a half-back by trade, he is a midfielder, and he is another player that's obviously recently retired. But I think Gary Brennan is that good of a midfielder, he was that good for Clare, that you just can't leave him out in my opinion. He's an exceptional footballer in midfield. Like, he could literally carry that Clare team at times when he was playing for them. He'd get the points, he'd get the goals, he'd do the defensive output. One of the best all-round players to arguably ever not win an All-Ireland in my opinion. 1 All-Star nomination in 2016. And yeah, just an exceptional player in the midfield. And look, listen, obviously in wing-back you could look at James Nallen, you could look at Anthony Rainbow. But, Gary Brennan was that good in midfield that he gets in there in my opinion. And the next player, actually Aaron Kiernan, who did actually play in Gary Brennan's position, of course, in a halfback or in a right halfback, but Aaron Kiernan was that good again that for me I couldn't leave him out, so I had to put him in here at centre back. Intelligent, adaptable, could play a number of different positions in my opinion. His output up to a T in terms of the modern game, offered a brilliant threat going forward. He chose the right times to go forward for Armagh as well, which is one of the reasons why he gets in here. And obviously looking at what he's achieved in his time playing Gaelic football for Armagh, 4 Ulster titles, 1 National League, 1 Under-21 All-Ireland, and 1 Young Footballer of the Year as well. So an exceptional footballer in Aaron Kiernan, of course. And yeah, without doubt, he gets in there at centre-back. So in at left half-back, we have Kevin Cassidy of Donegal. without doubt one of the best defenders in Gaelic football and all-round wing backs in Gaelic footballing history, in my opinion. And yeah, Kevin Cassidy, obviously, very infamously fell out with Jim McGuinness, of course, the Donegal senior football manager at the time in 2011, just a year short before Donegal would win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. In terms of Kevin Cassidy, though, he played between 2002 and 2011, winning an Ulster title, of course, in that time. That Ulster title was, in fact, in 2011. He won a National League as well and 2 All-Stars in that time as well. And obviously that point he scored against Kildare, of course, in 2011, the All-Ireland, was it a quarter-final? It must have been a quarter-final because they played Dublin in the semi-final. That point he scored in that game as well towards the end, exceptional. And yeah, remembering him against Dublin in the semi-final in 2011 as well. Like, Dublin really, really struggled to find a way through Donegal in that game. It was arguably one of the worst games I've ever seen and ever been to, but at the same time, it was one of the best defensive performances from Donegal and from any team that I've ever seen, in all honesty. And Kevin Cassidy was hugely part of that, in my opinion. And yeah, look, listen, very unlucky with the fact that he didn't win an All-Ireland. He had that, disruption, of course, with Jim McGuinness, and unfortunately missed out on his All-Ireland in 2012. But yeah, the kind of good thing for him is that he does get, he gets on this team, and he is in the discussion for one of the best players to never win an All-Ireland. Some other defenders as well on this list. I mean, John Keane, Aaron Hoey, Brian Lacey. John Keane of Westmeath, Aaron Hoey of Louth, and Brian Lacey of Kildare. So there were 3 defenders who also could have made it onto this team as well. But we'll move on to the midfield, and I don't think there can be much surprises that Kieran Whelan is in this team. I mean, you wouldn't really think of Dublin players getting on this team when you think of players that have never won the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. But as we very well know, there was a 16-year gap between 2011 and 1995 when Dublin did not win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. And sadly enough for Kieran Whelan, he played for pretty much that entire time period. He started his career in 96, stopped in 2009, came onto the team just as Dublin were All-Ireland Senior Football Champions in 95, but then unfortunately retired just before, Dublin's era of dominance just started to begin. So very unlucky for Kieran Whelan. He won 6 Leinster titles and 2 All-Stars, and I suppose one thing that did surprise me as a Dublin fan myself, looking back, and you think he only won 6 Leinster titles in that time. You think of Dublin being so dominant in the Leinster Senior Football Championship, but the reality was Dublin back then, in the late 90s and early 2000s, were actually really poor. Like, I think they won 1 Leinster title in a period of like 6 to 7 years. And obviously, you have to look at Kildare and Meath, who were exceptional back then. Offaly, Wexford had good players back then, of course, as well. So Dublin were just really, really poor all around. But Kieran Whelan, an exceptional midfielder. He was one of the best players, in my opinion, at catching the loose ball, catching a breaking ball, and just leaping and getting a high ball. He's a brilliant catcher of the ball. He could always get an extra yard over his man. And he was brilliant at times for Dublin when they were under pressure, when, they had their backs against the wall, and he'd win a ball, he'd win a high ball, get a turnover, and get Dublin back on the front foot. So, look, listen, on that Facebook post and Instagram post, there were a few people saying Kieran Whelan is overrated and maybe he shouldn't have got in there. And, we'll have a look at some other midfielders maybe who should have got in there now in a moment. But for me, I just don't think you can not have Kieran Whelan. He was an exceptional footballer for Dublin, like one of the best midfielders ever for Dublin, in my opinion. And I suppose maybe a mad question is, would he get in the midfield today for Dublin? He probably wouldn't. He probably wouldn't get ahead of McCarthy and Fenton. But, in terms of the best midfielders to never win an All-Ireland, I think Kieran Whelan has to be in that discussion, in my opinion. And right alongside him, we've Dermot Earley of Kildare. Much like Kieran Whelan, one of the most well-rounded midfielders in the game, in my opinion. Played for Kildare between 97 and 2013, won 2 Leinster titles, 2 All-Stars, an exceptional footballer without doubt, Dermot Earley of Kildare. Obviously came into the team in 97, played in the 98 All-Ireland final. You look back at that Kildare team as well, and of course, was it Glenn Ryan? Actually, he was a player I forgot to mention earlier. He probably should have made it in at centre-back ahead of Aaron Kiernan, but obviously I just felt that Aaron Kiernan was just that bit better at wing-back, and Gary Brennan was so good in midfield. Unfortunately, Glenn Ryan had to miss out, but you think of that Kildare team in general back in 98, that had Anthony Rainbow. You had Johnny Doyle in there as well. Just an exceptional, all-rounded, really, really brilliant football team in terms of Kildare. And Dermot Earley, without doubt, getting in there for Kildare. Winning 2 Leinster titles, 2 All-Stars. and just a brilliant midfielder in that central midfield role. And you think of some of the battles that him and Kieran Whelan had down the years. Some very intense battles between Dublin and Kildare down the years, and one of the reasons why Kildare kept coming back and were so competitive throughout the 2000s was because of Johnny Doyle, or was because of Dermot Earley. I mean, Johnny Doyle as well, but Dermot Earley was exceptional without doubt for Kildare. And looking at some other midfielders who could have gone in here, so John Galvin of Limerick. To be honest, I never really seen too much of John Galvin for Limerick, so I guess that's a slight on my part, to be honest. Obviously Limerick weren't always in the latter stages of the championship, but they did have a great team. I remember around that 2000s era where I think they made an All-Ireland quarter-final, and they were certainly knocking on the door thereabouts. So John Galvin, fair enough, gets in the discussion. Dermot Earley of Roscommon. So again, I didn't watch Gaelic football prior to 95 because I was only born in 95. So Dermot Earley Senior of Roscommon, fair enough. Dermot McCabe, Cavan, Paddy Keenan, Loud, and Enda Muldoon of Derry, all very much in the discussion as well. And in at right half forward, we were just talking about Johnny Doyle, which was why I probably started mixing up names here or there. So Johnny Doyle of Kildare in at right half forward. I don't think there can be too many arguments with this one. He played for Kildare between 2000 and 2014. I think I said he was in the 98 All-Ireland final. I beg your pardon, he wasn't. He won one Leinster title, and he also won one All-Star as well in his time playing for Kildare. He was a brilliant free kick taker, a clever footballer, scored a total of 8 goals and 260 points in his time playing for Kildare. So that tells you what an exceptional talent he was, of course, in his playing days. And yeah, look, listen, you look back at Kildare in that time period, and you even look back to the 2009 Leinster final when Kildare and Dublin played in what was the best Leinster final ever, in my opinion, between Dublin and Kildare back then. You think of all the very talented footballers that were on show, even for the likes of Dublin. Bernard Brogan, arguably one of his best ever individual performances, in my opinion. And yeah, look, listen, Kildare were an exceptional team. He was a brilliant free kick taker as well, so you could rely on him for that as well. So he gets in there at right half forward, and right beside him we have Eamon O'Hara in at centre half forward of Sligo. Very explosive, dynamic forward. Played for Sligo between 1994 and 2013. And one of the longest ever serving Gaelic footballers of all time. And what a player Eamon O'Hara was for Sligo. I mean, you think back to that 2007 Connacht final when he scored that, very important goal, of course, in the first half against Galway. He was brilliant. He was very explosive. He was brilliant at running off the shoulder, could beat a couple of players, create that extra yard of space, kicking brilliant points and goals, and just a part of that very hard-working and very skillful Sligo side that had the likes of Mark Bretney in there as well. And he could play anywhere, really, in that Sligo team. He was a very versatile player, could play a half-back, could play in midfield, could play in the full forward line, in a corner forward, in at centre forward. He could play pretty much anywhere, really. So Eamon O'Hara gets in there for me, and like what I was saying before, he won one Connacht title, of course, in 2007, and he got an All-Star as well. So Eamon O'Hara in there for Sligo, no surprises whatsoever. And in at left half forward, we have Declan Brown of Tipperary. And, one of the great Gaelic footballers to ever play the game, in my opinion. Played between 1996 and 2007 for Tipperary. An exceptional talent, without doubt, of course, for Tipperary. And not only is he one of the best players to never win the All-Ireland, he's probably the best player to never win a provincial title. Maybe you're looking at Matty Ford, which we'll get onto in a moment as well. But Declan Brown, I mean, what a player he was for Tipperary. And, fortunately enough, I've probably never seen enough of him, as a kid watching Gaelic football, because Tipperary were never in the later stages of the All-Ireland Championship or in the Connacht or in the Munster Championship. So, yeah, look, listen, never won a provincial title. He, of course, did win 2 All-Stars in 98 and in 2003. Of course, Tipperary did play in the Munster final in 1998, and he was significantly part of that. He was really in his prime back then. So Declan Brown, exceptional talent. And look, listen, you probably could have popped him in the full forward line. Well, a lot of these forwards, they could have played in any real position, really. A lot of these players very versatile, brilliant at getting forward, and just shown an array of talent across all elements of Gaelic football. So Declan Brown getting in, of course, in the left half forward position. And we move into the full forward line, and we have, for me, the best player, in my opinion, to never win the All-Ireland in football, that is, and that is Kieran MacDonald. I mean, you run out of verbs to describe this lad. You run out of words to say realistically about Kieran MacDonald. I mean, best player in the team in my opinion, one of the best players to ever do it. And look, listen, for any Mayo players, Mayo fans, whatever, whoever's watching, let me know down in the comments below, is Kieran McDonald the best player to ever play for Mayo and not win the All-Ireland? Because there's a number of Mayo players, and we'll get onto another one in a moment as well. Yeah, look, listen, scored 13 goals and 96 points between 1994 and 2007, won 4 Connacht titles, 1 All-Star, and played in 3 All-Ireland finals as well. He did win an All-Ireland club senior title at one stage as well, but of course, obviously, that's a separate competition to this one. But, yeah, I mean, what a player he was. I mean, I'll always remember, that 2006 performance against Dublin in the semi-finals where he was absolutely extraordinary. He only won 1 All-Star as well, which is a massive surprise in my opinion. You think Kieran McDonald maybe should have won a few more when you think of some of the players on this list that have 2 or 3 All-Stars, and Kieran McDonald only had the 1 All-Star, which is a massive surprise in my opinion. But yeah, what a player, what a talent he was. Just so gifted, naturally gifted as well. Like, he could do things on the pitch that you didn't even know was possible. You didn't even know you could do that in Gaelic football, and he'd just do it out of nowhere. Scoring from 40 yards, or just, extraordinary passes, weaving around players, creating that extra space. Exceptional talent altogether was Kieran McDonald. And in a full forward, it is Matty Ford, of course, of Wexford. And like what I was saying before with Declan Brown, one of the best players, not just to never win an All-Ireland, but also to never win a provincial title as well. He was 2-footed as well, so he could kick points from his left, kick points from his right as well. So it didn't matter what side he was on. He was brilliant either way. And he was unmarkable at times. Like, you just couldn't get anywhere near him. And he gave the likes of Dublin and Meath and Kildare just awful times at times when he came up against them. And like what I was saying before, he never won a provincial title. He did win an All-Star, of course, in his time as well. But, you do look back to the 2011 Leinster football final when Wexford played Dublin and lost by 3 points on that occasion. He retired just before that. He retired in January of 2011. And you think back, like, Ben Brosnan rang an absolute ring around Dublin's defence that day, and the opportunity was there for me for Wexford to beat Dublin. I remember being at that game and thinking Dublin could easily lose this game, in my opinion, and they just about got over the line and obviously went on to win the All-Ireland. But you do look back, and to be honest with you, I do think, if Matty Ford had kept going, if he had kept playing and was in that team, who knows, maybe then Wexford could have caused the upset and won a Leinster Senior Football Championship and won that year's Leinster Senior Football Championship. But obviously, it wasn't meant to be. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, as they say. And Matty Ford, yeah, what an exceptional talent he was. And last but not least, we have Andy Moran of Mayo. And like what I was saying before, Andy Moran, Kieran McDonald, maybe some of the current Mayo players right now, Cillian O'Connor, Aidan O'Shea, like, who's the best player to play for Mayo and not win an All-Ireland? Because it really is a massive discussion without doubt. And Andy Moran, he's very much in the debate, isn't he? What a player, what a talent he was between 2004 and 2019, winning 8 Connacht titles in that time, 1 National League, and he played in 6 All-Ireland finals as well, won 2 All-Stars and Footballer of the Year in 2017. Yeah, what a player, what a talent. Sometimes when you look back on that string of All-Ireland final defeats, you can think of players maybe that didn't play their best on the day, maybe the likes of Aidan O'Shea, maybe Cillian O'Connor could have done a bit more. But I always look at Andy Moran and think he always gave everything. A bit like Lee Keegan as well, like, always gave everything, always left it all out on the pitch. Scored the decisive goals, scored the crucial goals, made big differences in big matches. And a bit like Kieran McDonald, he could do things on the pitch that you just didn't know was possible. And, he would find himself, he was very, versatile. He'd find himself in different areas of the pitch. He was very hard to pick up. He caused Dublin's defence a lot of problems a lot of the time because he was unmarkable in many ways. And yeah, Andy Moran, exceptional talent, and gets in there for me. And I suppose looking at some other forwards on the list as well before we finish up, you had Paul Barden in there of Longford. Like what I was kind of saying before with John Galvin of Limerick, I probably didn't see enough of Paul Barden with Longford, unfortunately. Paddy Bradley of Derry, you had Benny Coulter and Darren Hughes, both of Down. I mean, Benny Coulter, what an exceptional talent he was with Down, of course, in that 2010 season, really driving Down onto an All-Ireland Senior Football final. Desi Dolan of Westmeath, and he was an interesting one. Like, I had him on the team at one point ahead of Matty Ford, and I know Desi Dolan won a Leinster title, of course, back in 2004. And Matty Ford didn't win a Leinster title, but I just think in the overall scheme of longevity of his career, I just think Matty Ford was a little bit better than Desi Dolan, but really a coin toss. You could use the split between the two of them. Michael Meehan of Galway as well. I mean, yeah, probably the best player to never win an All-Star as well. He never won an All-Star, quite incredibly. What a player, like what a talent. That goal was against Cork was it 2014? I mean, that was something else. Maybe the best goal we've ever seen in Croke Park. I mean, that was exceptional stuff. To be fair, Owen Mulligan's goal was a little bit better, wasn't it? But Michael Meehan's goal as well, exceptional, absolutely brilliant stuff altogether. Trevor Mortimer of Mayo, he definitely gets in the discussion as well. You think back to 2004, 2006 as well. Exceptional talents coming into that Mayo side. Caused Dublin a lot of problems in that 2006 game as well. So Trevor Mortimer gets in there for me. Anyway, lads, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Do let me know down in the comments below. What did you think of the team? Of course, do bear in mind this is my opinion, but feel free to disagree. Let me know down in the comments below what players you would have had on here. And yeah, of course, let me know down below what you thought of the video. Leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll have a number of different videos out like this over the coming weeks, with the fact that the All-Ireland Senior Football and Hurling Championships, they don't look like they're going to resume anytime soon, do they? So we have to keep things going somehow. So I'm going to make videos on, best players to never win an All-Ireland Hurling, best players to not win an All-Star, different things like that. And really kind of, range out different types of content over the next coming weeks and months. But yeah, look, listen, I do hope you enjoyed. And yeah, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you soon.